and for some slides for today's agenda to be presented to everyone. If we don't have them already made, Henry, yeah, we can have that produced. So the idea of today is we have Kati McHugh from the DWP, who we're very grateful to have with us. We're going to have a presentation of sorts, I think, from you, Kati. I think that's right. On those questions from the last forum, which members put together and gave us to put to the DWP. So we're going to have that first, and then we're going to have the sort of Q&A after that. But the Q&A is going to be organised a little bit differently today. And what we're going to do is have questions and answers put into the chat, okay? And then Henry, my colleague Henry Fouts, will read them out, and then we'll try and get them answered. And if not, we'll have them put into another piece of paper, which hopefully Kati can take with her back to the DWP. So can I just ask first, Kati, are you with us?
I am indeed, yes. And I was slightly alarmed by the thought of presentation. I was just going to answer a few questions, so I've nothing prepared. Yes.
So. Okay, sorry if I got that wrong. That's all right. So the idea was those questions from the last forum, which would have been presented to the DWP. But if we can do this how best you, however you like, really.
Yeah, no, I was just going to read through the questions and provide you the answers that I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
If that's okay.
That qualifies as presentations for me. So yeah. Thank you.
I assume it's the questions that are in the invitation.
Yes.
So the first one is filling the final opportunities. I think this is the push to fill. We've got a few weeks left to fill as many of the jobs as we possibly can. There is a real push in operations. The deadline is looming, and we want to get as many young people into these jobs as we possibly can within the timescales available. I don't know if you have any feedback from you, how that's going from your perspective, but there is a real push in terms. There was a big leaders call yesterday, still pushing hard, reminding people to, people with health problems may be ideal for this and the support that's available. So we're not letting up at all until the final day. I don't sure if you're seeing that at all from your perspective.
Well, again, we'll let individual members talk about that. It might. We won't have hands at the minute. We're going to try to put this to the Q&A after this. But what we will do is, if we feel that there are members that have maybe are not feeling that and have been having issues in trying to get some of their vacancies filled, then they can make that point in the Q&A. So
the other thing I would add to that is that we do have a lot of vacancies. The number of young people is falling, so it's very much about getting the right young person in the right job. So I do have to manage expectations that they're yes, we're pushing hard, but we have a lot of we have a lot of vacancies, which is fantastic. So it's trying to push to the end to fill as many as possible, but the possibility of filling all of them is fairly limited, and that's understandable in the economic climate as it's changed as time's gone on.
Right. Right. What's next?
Question. Question is where do we go from here to the end of Kickstart jobs, timescales and milestones? I should be able to share this very basic. This is an internal document, so let's see if I can just get it up for a second. It has all the milestones on it. You may have already seen it. It's is that coming? No, that's not coming through. That one.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is essentially where we're at. So last date for receipt of vacancies was the 31st of January, so all vacancies should be with us now. Vacancies will start to remove at the end of the month, 28th of February. The last closure date is the 1st of March, so that allows the work coaches to carry on filling and people to employers to select and recruit for the last job start the 31st of March. You need to get your last start declarations back to us for the 30th of April because the payments team disperses in October.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very much the high level timeline we're working to. I hope that's not a surprise to anybody. It should have already been communicated.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll stop presenting that. It's
right. If you could share that afterwards, that'd be useful. To us.
I'll need to check because it's
okay.
It's
yes. Yeah.
a document and it's part of a very detailed slide pack about dates and closures and risks and usual things we have to go through. I think the information is already been shared through various sources. It's nothing new. The next question. How will gateways be asked to account for spend? Nothing different as is in the grant agreement. Gateways are asked to maintain record of how they spent the grant, how they've dispersed the funding, and that will continue. We're not going to come up with anything else, anything additional for the end of the scheme. Okay.
Remember, everyone, just to remind you, for the Q&A, we're going to ask you if you have questions about these, do put them into the chat now, and we will ask them after we've gone through the rest of the questions with Kati here.
Okay. How will gateways be asked? Are there procedures for the end of the scheme? No, the scheme is as it is, and it will finish. As I said, there's nothing. We won't going to throw anything additional at you at this stage. It's just that the process will be as it is. There's a sunset clause in the grant agreement, so it's just the jobs that are filled will be paid to the end. We will ask you to take part of the evaluation, which I'm sure you're aware of, particularly as a gateway. And it's an important part of the learning from this, but no, nothing in accounting terms. It's just the young people will go through to the end, and that is it. The scheme will finish. How the scheme will run down, I think we'll just run. The young people will start by the 31st of March. They'll have to finish by the end of September. There'll be final tidying up of payments at the end, and then that's it. Kickstart will be something we just want to learn from, and we can bank learning for the next time, hopefully, if there is a next time. Hopefully not another pandemic. And there were questions around the evaluation. Now the evaluation is ongoing. We have no significant findings. They will come out next year. There's learning that we're getting from various things which are feeding into the way we're managing it, but there's nothing we can formally share at this time. You probably, we are looking at the numbers of young people who are retained in jobs, the young people who come to universal credit and then go into another job. We have no findings on those yet, but those are the things we're particularly interested in terms of value for money, because we want more young people in unsubsidised jobs to make this more cost effective to the economy. It's looking good, but this is just anecdotal feedback, and you'll probably have the same understanding and feeling that we have. But yeah, we're waiting with excitement for more evaluation findings to come out. We also have the survey as well, which we're now sending out to young people. It's a census, but as with all surveys, response rates will be, limited. But we're gathering what information we can from wherever to learn as much as we can. We hope you'll be part of that.
Just a quick question on those. Whether it's that survey or stats, do you have publishing dates or rough publishing dates that you have for the release of that? I
think it's spring next year is the evaluation.
Okay.
I'll confirm that with you for the. That's on the top of my head. I may be wrong. But...
Okay. I've now switched to on my other device to the questions in the chat just to see what's there. So I'm going to ask you, Kati, how many other questions do we have? Was that it?
That was the end of the questions. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Right. So I've got some questions in the chat now. I've got one from Jude who put their hand up quite quickly. So I'll say again to the rest of you, if you have questions that you want to ask now, whether they be specific to yourselves or a matter of process, which might be applicable to anyone here, then do ask them and put them into the chat. So, Jude, it's more whether this is a question. When we get a Universal Credit Kickstart referral email, could the job centre connect the employer with the young person to take out the waiting for them to apply step?
I think this refers to the young person has to, they have to apply for the job. Yeah. We can't force that application. It would be, we would need a sanction to do that.
Okay.
So it has to be a voluntary application, and that's what's been core to the scheme. We didn't want you having people forced on you that didn't want to apply. So it's it does add to the process, but I think it's a principle that we've tried to stick to.
Jude also asked, also can the DWP clarify if this scheme is open to young people who are only allowed to work 16 hours or below before they lose any benefits / housing?
It's 24 hours. The only time we allow for a reasonable adjustment is for health grounds. So if a young person can't work full time, can't work 24 hours because they have a health problem, then yes, that's acceptable. We can accept a reasonable adjustment. We've looked into the housing, and young people, even though they will not be as well off as other young people by taking a Kickstart job, they will still be better off than on benefits by taking a Kickstart job. Is what the people responsible for those benefits are telling me. I'm afraid I'm not an expert on those things, but that is the advice we've been given.
Okay. Right, we don't have any more questions so far. So we normally have lots of questions when we do this format in a different way.
Can I just go back to that question? I wasn't quite. I said the only way we could get rid of the process of waiting for the young person to apply is to miss them out of the process, and that's the only way we could do it. So we don't want to do that. So the only way we can alter the process will be to do it, and we don't want to. So I'm afraid it's we have to wait for the young person to apply.
Right. There was an additional comment here from Jude. He wasn't asking for this to be forced, just a tweak.
No, that's the question I was just answering. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Right.
It's the only way we could do
about it. We're talking about it right now, I suppose. But yes, who can I talk to?
Yeah, realistically, the process won't be changing 3 weeks before the end date. I'm afraid. Right. It may be uncomfortable, but it's we won't be able to get a change in that period, and it doesn't fit with the policy intent anyway. Right.
Specifically, it was about the 16-hour piece. We've got some other questions now. Will the national insurance increase in April be reflected in the funding?
Yes, we've
right.
Yes, that's ready to go.
And I presume the same answer for the national minimum wage increase?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have another question. We've had another university student accepted onto the programme. They don't claim university credit, but we've been told by email to put it through. This was actually something that was mentioned in our very active Kickstart forum chat the other day. So this is where the work coach is just, well, we know what the rules are. They have to be on universal credit. They can't be applying for full-time education. They can't be in full-time education. But they've been told to put it through by the work coach. I'm assuming you can't really say much about that.
It's an individual case. I can look into if you want to send me details, but the work coaches are told we're not, if they have to be on universal credit, otherwise we can't we don't get the RTI link to make your payment. So that's the other thing is that a university student is not at risk of long-term unemployment, so we shouldn't be focusing this spending on the student, even though in the long term, it's an individual thing. If the job centre said,
yes, so we've got an additional, so this is from Tristan Cropley from Brent. So He put an additional comment here. I was in the JCP last week, and the staff were hassling employers to take people there and then. We as a gateway were there, and the JCP staff were wanting to speak to the HR managers of our employers to rush things through. Shame they were this proactive for the last 18 months. So, yeah, this has been mentioned before, where we've had, obviously, the idea is to target those who are perhaps vulnerable to long-term unemployment, but there has been plenty of cases where people have been either in full-time, say, university education, have graduated from it, or are applying for it, and the work coaches are still trying to bring through quite attractive candidates that would be able to fill these roles, but they've been pushed through, and this has happened quite a lot.
Yeah, we have a lot of graduates on the scheme, and that in many cases has been appropriate because they have other issues, which means they are at a disadvantage in the labour market. So just by being a graduate does not mean, or someone who's been at university, doesn't mean that they're not eligible for Kickstart. I think it's very much about an individual need. So the number of graduates we had in the beginning was proportionately higher than we would have liked. It's now more to a level that is consistent with the wider universal credit caseload. Again, this is just not detailed analysis, but there's the information we have so far. So we're less worried about in management terms, and to make sure we are targeting effectively. We're trying to get messages out to work coaches about people who the students shouldn't, and we've done a lot of guidance and sending this out. There's an issue that young work coaches are keen to get young people into jobs, and if they see a good match, they want to try and make that fit and make that work. So we're battling against the enthusiasm of the work coach to fill a job, to try and fill that role. But the guidance is out there. Once they've started a job, we don't tend to take people out of a job because they have a legal agreement with that employer. It's they have a contract of employment or a written record. So if somebody has if DWP has mistakenly sent somebody to a job, we tend to let it go through because we've made the mistake in the first place, and there is a contract of employment which we don't want to then cause a problem. So we just acknowledge that we should not have done it and let it go through when we can. Some cases we can't let it go through because there isn't an underlying entitlement, and we have to say, sorry, no, we can't do it. But that's how we tend to handle these odd cases where we shouldn't have made the referral.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So another question here. We have a young person with one of our employers who's refusing to attend the employability course we provide. He is a graduate and thinks he doesn't need it. Will this be a problem for the employer down the line? I
think if they record it, get it written down, offer alternative support in different ways, perhaps, if they don't need if they feel they don't need it, but if they are, talking about other skills, other soft skills, or support to do the CV, you just say, we don't want to do this, but we're offering it in different ways, then that would be fine, I'm sure.
Okay, but there wouldn't be a problem for employers instead of withdrawal or clawback funding or anything like that?
No, if they said no, we're not replying, we're not delivering any. Mm-hmm. But there are different ways. Employability skills can be delivered in different ways. A lot of it can be face to face from the employer.
Right. So another question. From my experience, work coaches have been working against the scheme. Most of my employers have been discouraging. Have been discouraged from pursuing Kickstart as applicants from work coaches, telling them they will never fill their vacancies. We have many of our employers giving up grants due to this belief. So again, trying to think. These issues have been presented before, but obviously there's a difference in how particular job centres and particular work coaches, some have been, and I think most have been very, very helpful to gateways and to those Kickstarters and prospective Kickstarters. But there has been a number of claims like this and throughout the course of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this is the case. It's not the messages we put out. We have, it's a vast network. If you give me instances, I can follow up. Because it's not the message we want to get out there. So I'm sorry if that's been the case.
Right. Yeah, so they have this similar issue with K-downs as well. Again, these issues have been talked about before in previous forums. yes, we have some people saying that they can give you examples of this as well that maybe should be chased up. If not for the sake of Kickstart, which obviously it will end this year, but for any other purposes, that relationship between the DWP and what's downstream of the job centres.
Yeah. I mean, there are jobs we know which we won't be able to fill. I know we're sitting on jobs for midwives and accountants, which we know we can't fill them. So it's not worth putting the effort in. But it's like you're trying not to read the messages and talking at the same time.
No, don't worry. I mean, I'm trying to read them to you, so that's kind of the idea. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you would have noted one of them in there. So again, there's. I mean, our Kickstart report that we published last year made this when we were talking to most people on this call and those beyond. It's, you know, many of them had very good relationships with their job centres and their work coaches and their K-downs, that some did not. So there was that division. But one comment in here was that they had a very good relationship with their K-down and were really supportive. So obviously there's as Tristan was putting this postcode lottery. So who was writing the book on this? Well, not us.
The Public Accounts Committee report should be out soon, so there's plenty to be seen there. That was on the 4th of December, so the report is due out the next couple of weeks with the recommendations.
Was it that will probably refer to the NEO report that came out?
Yes,
November of last year.
So. Yeah, it leads on from that. Yes, so it's.
Okay. Do we have any other questions to put to Kati?
Okay.
Any more? Well, if you do have, right, will we be sent an official end date for each trainee?
The process is as it is now.
Right.
6 months, so there's no change. You will get 6. It's 26 weeks work, 6 months. So whatever that works out as, and you'll get 6 monthly payments to cover that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nothing's changed.
Okay. We don't have anything else on the agenda, so if we have, I have asked a question about record keeping, and our KDM has raised a SIL but no reply. So that'll be a specific case. If you could tell us where, Julie, then that would.
Hiya, yes, sorry. Yeah. Julie Duncan, Durham County Council Gateway. Yeah, we've done everything electronically, obviously because of COVID. So everything we've got, applications, processes, payments, it's all electronic. Obviously, as the programme winds down, we want to get this all sorted, archived, etc. Are we fine to do that in an electronic way?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I just don't know why
that's how we do it.
Because I work on ESF, and obviously with ESF you have to print everything out, which is a bit of a nightmare. Okay. So we were hoping you were going to say that.
Like I said, only requirements are in the grant agreement or the terms and conditions. So if it.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't see anything that actually said that about electronic in there, so that might be my fault. But I did have a look. But that's great. Thank you, Katie.
Okay.
And I will follow this pressure to close vacancies, because that's not it's not what we see from our side. So I don't know where this is coming from. Perhaps people wanting to just do housekeeping to tidy things up.
Right. Yeah, I mean this. I mean, members forgive me, just to try to sort of coalesce something of it. From the end of last summer, this became an increasingly very common complaint that there was pressure to, well, you either had pressure to close vacancies, or you had difficulties with K-downs and job centres removing vacancies, and then obviously the capping issue. It did seem like, even if in COET, there was a push to try and not a push to try and limit the number of vacancies that were filled, but there's the capping was. I mean, we had one of the comments here was we had similar numbers. We had to delete 300 vacancies. You can probably see that. So this did cause some consternation at the time, particularly in the autumn.
I know the capping was a particularly difficult process we had to go through. I think it was trying to find in other vacancies we can fill. And seeing some of those messages play back in a very strange ways is sometimes trying to make the link about what it is they're trying to do. And it's I will follow it up and try and find out.
Okay. I counted up yesterday, and we have. Sorry, I've got an alarm going off. That's not helpful. Yeah. So again, this is similar comment here. We've lost around 150 vacancies through pressure to close. We had 620 starts now, and have 280 still out there, and that point has come from someone who I know a very, very successful gateway. Someone who I spoke to for the Kickstart report, and we had 40 vacancies cancelled by mistake made in the job centre. Well, that again, it's part of the job centre plus and the postcode lottery that's been mentioned already. What is Kickstart Direct?
I don't know. What is Kickstart Direct?
Yes, it's the first time I've heard of that myself.
It might be a local scheme, like we have there's the Kickstart, which is the one which is the thing you've described, which has been going on since last year about encouraging employees to come in and fill job centres straight away. Okay. Jobs that work recruit on the employer's behalf. I mean, there are occasions when the employers say you choose who you want, you choose the work coach, and I will take who you refer. And that's something we used to do years ago with job interview guarantee and that sort of thing. We do the pre-selection and we just send you one person. Some job centres will do that. We'll offer that level of support, level of interviewing. So that's what Kickstart Direct is. Yeah, I think it must be a local initiative.
Right. Okay. All right. How many Kickstarters have DWP taken on themselves?
I don't know the final number. I've got 2.
You have 2 yourself within your
policy, in the policy team we have 2, and we're only a team of 20 people. So.
Okay. Right. So. Any more? Have we got any other questions? I'm just now trying to look over these. I think we've covered most of these. So. I hope everyone's all right with us doing it this way rather than before. We thought it might streamline things a little bit. So. Do you have any other questions? Our gateway seeing the young people being kept on. Our gateways seeing the young people being kept on. Well, I suppose that's a question not just for Kati, but for everyone else here. Okay, 50-50. Completers. Yes, 50-50. Okay. I mean, yeah, this is a question for gateways as much as anyone else. But what? I mean, DWP may not collect data on that so much. But what consideration DWP given to those being those Kickstarters being kept on, and what options are available for employers who have taken on Kickstarters, whether it's being kept on in a permanent job or an apprenticeship or a traineeship or.
Yeah, no, there are all those things. Quite sometimes the traineeship comes before Kickstart. It varies sometimes, yes. But yeah, we have close links with the Department for Education, and we share data with them, so they can contact employers to offer apprenticeships. So it's most that we know of are they're either being retained or they're leaving early to go into an unsubsidised job. Some are returned to universal credit. The period they return to universal credit for is shorter than average. So there are some really strong indications, but they're not. These are just indications. We haven't got the hard and fast data yet, but we're positive about those outcomes. It's feeling, if you're getting 50-50, 70-30, I think was one of them. That would be that'll be an improvement on Future Jobs Fund. Which, of course, that's why the decision was not just to go with public sector and third sector. The private sector involvement was important because we wanted these to be real jobs, and that helps.
Yeah, it's 70%, 6 out of 10. So it's some of the better examples here. There's a thing about that came up quite a bit. In the research we did for Kickstart was the apprenticeship question. What are the options they're going into apprenticeships? Obviously, you mentioned the Future Jobs Fund there. The youth contract from the work programme days had an apprenticeship fund as sort of bolted on into that sort of policy package. So we did get, so in talking to some of the local councils, we found out obviously that for local councils the apprenticeship minimum wage is the same, and in some cases that they pay the living wage for their apprenticeship. So if they jumped from a Kickstart placement to an apprenticeship, they actually had an increase in pay, which is fine because that's an attractive option for that Kickstarter. But in the private sector, you wouldn't have had that. Where the apprenticeship minimum wage is it still £4.30? I think. Obviously, that's a lot lower. So
yeah. And it could be the case that happens. It's I think, yeah, I don't know anything about the apprenticeship numbers. I would hope to see an increase in apprenticeships because there was a criticism that Kickstart were taking away from young people starting on apprenticeships. I would personally I'd like to see that reversed, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, it
was just that joined up thinking bit, which again, the youth contract looked like it had, and so some numbers on that would be really very useful. It's because again, many have gone into apprenticeships, but it looks like that has actually happened in more of the public sector and the local government sector in particular. Do we have? I didn't wake up my phone again. What other questions do we have? Oh no, this is some. Do we have any other questions for Kati? Yeah. Any other questions? I mean, we can. This can be short and sweet if we want it to be.
Probably reflects the stage we are in the scheme.
Yes. All right. We've got another one from Chris Pound. Do the DWP consider the Kickstart programme an overall success?
Yes, we won't know until we get the evaluation. The bottom line of this is whether it's value for money, whether we're saving more. So that is the final question that will come a couple of years down the line when we know whether people have taken jobs, stayed in jobs for longer than a comparator group. So that's the final. But I think we're now looking at over 130,000 young people in Kickstart jobs.
Yeah.
And it's been if that's 130,000 young people in a better place than they were before, then personally, I think that's good. It may not have reached the scale which we'd hoped. There've been issues along the way, but it's just that number is good. You know, I see you talking about you've lost jobs, but just see the numbers of jobs that are going through is really great to see. We couldn't have done this without you and other gateways, because we all know that the majority of jobs have gone through gateways. You've been a core part of this of the Kickstart journey.
Yeah.
But it's not been easy. That's all I can say.
No. Everyone on the call, I think, gets that sense of it. Kati, I might ask you, because you mentioned early on, and obviously, if more questions come in, we'll ask them. You mentioned early on about what maybe alluded to what might happen after Kickstart. What obviously Kickstart will draw to a close. We still have 1.2 million vacancies in the country, don't we?
Well, this is where, and I'm not working on ways to work, but it's way to work. Yeah. But it's clear there's a lot of learning from Kickstart has gone into that about how to work with employers, how to support employers better, because that's. I mean, my last job when I worked in the field 20 years ago was an employer services manager. So I work with employers. That sort of infrastructure, that role in the labour market has dwindled. So it's really good to see that coming back now. The active world of account management of employers, large and small, on the ground, and that is something we've learned an awful lot from Kickstarting and embedding that. But yes, someone mentioned on the line that there's a lot of focus in job centres on this. It's a very short campaign to bring this together to make this happen, and that is, the next focus of trying to fill those vacancies.
Yeah. I suppose the reason I asked about the vacancy, the 1.2 million vacancies record number, it's never been as high as 1 million before. It's now 1.2, although the rate, I think, has slowed, hasn't it? The rate of the growth of vacancies has slowed somewhat, but it's still very high. Large number of over 50s not re-entering the workforce for a variety of reasons: disability, ill health, and others.
And choices, through COVID.
Yes. Yeah. Those who are able to, relying on spouses or saving, whatever. Is there not a case for targeted employment support going forward then to try and fill those vacancies, whether it's disadvantaged groups, young people? I mean, surely the case for a targeted employment support is there, is it not?
If you're talking about a similar type of intermediate labour market, transitional employment, I can't see it happening in a tight labour market. The evaluation we've had in the past is it works well when we need to support people in a special way. So that's why it came in future jobs. And so in a tighter labour market, intermediate labour markets tend to be less successful because there are other jobs for people to go to. So there are always cases to be made for supporting one disadvantaged group or another, and and these are things that need to be made. Decisions that were made at the political level. It's the way to work is the way forward. It's and there'll be many people talking to politicians about supporting different groups in different ways, but we're focusing on putting the support in place, get the essentials right, working with employers to fill the vacancies as best we can on the ground, and if they're working with the universal credit caseload, making sure that those with health problems get the support they need to be able to take up these opportunities, that we target groups which are underrepresented in the labour market in appropriate ways. I mean, Kickstart have some great examples of Black and minority ethnic targeting, and the numbers are higher in Kickstart than are reflected in the wider labour market, again, from early indications. So that targeting has worked, and we're trying to carry on that type of specialist working with employers to try and continue that type of approach. But it's
so targeting, yes, maybe intermediate labour market, not now, but targeting, yes, you think?
Well, I'm not. I'm a mere functionary. No. It's whoever we target and the funding that will be available to support that at the political level, and it's
Sure. Okay. Just obviously, looking to the future. Obviously, there are already some recommendations. So someone's made a Kickstart Direct, which is there's other variations of this Kickstart phase, which I think will still be in the water for quite a while. One was Kickstart Plus, which was recommended by the Youth Employment Group, actually going back to 2020. So I think there will still be calls for this sort of intermediate labour market response from not just members on this call, but from others like the Youth Employment Group, Tony Wilson, the Institute for Employment Studies. So this won't go away, I don't think. I'm not sure what other members think based on their Kickstart experience. I know some. Obviously, it's been a headache for dealing with the process of this for some members and those people on this call, but I'm pretty sure most people would rather have it was there than not. given the orientation of many of the organisations on this call who want to help young people get into work. We have another question. Was an organisation sent out an anonymous survey? We as an organisation, sent out an anonymous survey to all our employers, most of which said they will never work with JC again, but were happy to continue with us. Why did the work coaches job centre? Why were the work coaches and job centre discouraging employers from dealing with gateways? This is again another complaint that emerged and became much more prominent in the back end of the summer and the autumn of last year. So why were job centres discouraging employers to deal with gateways and wanting to deal with them directly?
I don't recognise it in those terms. At the time, we would receive a lot of criticism about the 30 limit and requiring employees to go through gateways, and so they wanted to apply on the role. The message went out just employees, making sure employees knew they had the choice. They could use the gateway or come direct, and I think that was the message that was sent out. Right, so it was never seen as discouraging from working with gateways, because they have.
I mean, this is the point made here, and it is one that was made before, but again, maybe it's a part of that postcode lottery thing with different K-downs and different job centres doing things differently, maybe interpreting those instructions differently. Okay. Do you have any other questions? Again, we can always put them into the chat and over today or whenever, and we will collate them and put them together and try and get them back to the DWP, particularly regarding specific cases and specific problems you might be having.
Okay. Do you want me to stay on for the rest of the meeting?
Well, I think this will be the meeting. The agenda was yes, the two parts. What you gave us initially, answering the questions that we provided from before the meeting, and a Q&A session of the two. Okay, we've got one more question. How much monitoring of employers who have applied directly is the DWP doing? How much monitoring of employers?
We use the same level of monitoring. It's
right.
It's consistent for gateways and employers. So we have referral systems back through the work coaches in the 1 and 4 month reviews. We have a checking system which checks various cases, and then enhanced checking service. So it's all part of the same process. So we don't discriminate employers, gateways.
All right. Each time we think we're running out of questions, another one gets popped in there. But is the spending of the initial grant monitored?
There is an element of monitoring, but it's not. There's an enhanced checking service, and we have cases where doubts are raised, and we follow those through. Complex case team.
Right.
There is and where we have issues, that is where we will do further investigations. So we look for the things that, as in any risk-based approach, we look for things which may indicate a problem, and then follow those through. And those are the cases where we would then ask for more information from you, because there is something that we need to follow through and check.
Okay. Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, might bring this to a close. So if anyone objects, put it in the chat now and give us a question. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Right, so just a bit of housekeeping, not really housekeeping what we're talking about, but The ERSA would like to inform everyone here that the ERSA conference is returning after obviously a COVID-induced hiatus, if you want to think of it like that. So it's April the 5th. Is that right, Henry? It's April the 5th, isn't it, in Manchester?
Yeah, that is right. Yeah.
So we've already sort of started tweeting details about this, and you may, if you will do soon by email, get more information about it. So please consider coming if you're a member. If you're not a member, please consider joining. So we're very excited to have the conference back, and we're going to have a good set of speakers and lots of themed events for us all to get back in person talking about employment support. Right. So with that, I'd like to thank Kati McHugh from DWP for coming for answering some questions. Next month, March, I think we got one more. We might still do the forum as an ongoing thing after that, given that obviously placements can be put in post for the 6 months after the end of March. But for the moment, I think we will bid you good morning, and yes, we look forward to speaking to some of you soon. All right. Thanks very much.